On Christmas Eve of 2002, Laci Peterson, 27 years old and 8 months pregnant, vanished without a trace from her Modesto home. What should have been a joyful season turned into a nightmare for her family and an intense search for answers. This video dives into the mystery, the evidence, the other woman, and the court case that convicted her husband, Scott Peterson, of her murder. Laci Peterson was the picture of joy, a bright, friendly 27-year-old, deeply excited about becoming a mother. Living in Modesto, California, with her husband, Scott Peterson, she was preparing to welcome their first child, a son they'd planned to name Connor. She was a devoted wife and an involved daughter, maintaining close relationships with her family, who adored her upbeat personality. On Christmas Eve in 2002, everything changed. The peaceful life Laci had built would shatter, setting in motion one of the most widely publicized true crime cases in modern American history. Over the next several months, the search for Laci would grip the nation as details unraveled in unexpected and heartbreaking ways. It was a chilly morning on December 24th, 2002. Laci planned to go about her day as usual, preparing for the Christmas celebration. She was seen by a neighbor around 10 a.m., walking her dog, Mackenzie, along the quiet streets of her neighborhood. Laci was in high spirits, looking forward to the holiday with her family and anticipating the birth of her son, Connor, just weeks away. Her husband, Scott, told authorities that he had gone fishing at the Berkeley Marina that morning. By the time he returned home that afternoon, he found Mackenzie wandering alone with his leash still attached. But Laci was nowhere to be found. Scott would later recount his day, noting his fishing trip as a normal outing. But a fishing trip on Christmas Eve, leaving behind his pregnant wife, raised questions that would linger. From the beginning, Scott's alibi and choice of activities struck many as odd, and his behavior in the hours following her disappearance raised even more suspicions. What seemed to be a missing person case was already beginning to look much darker. The investigation into Laci's disappearance began immediately. Family, friends, and neighbors searched tirelessly, while police launched a full-scale investigation. The media quickly latched onto the story, turning Modesto into a hotspot of reporters, cameras, and intense scrutiny. Initially, Scott cooperated with law enforcement, giving his account of Christmas Eve and willingly participating in media appeals. But as the days wore on, those closest to Laci and even the public began to notice something unusual. Scott seemed distant, even calm. He was seen smiling and chatting casually during a vigil held for Laci, where friends and family members were openly grieving. This odd behavior did not align with what many expected of a distraught husband. Scott's family and friends began to wonder why he wasn't showing signs of distress, while police noted these inconsistencies and began to keep him under close watch. It wouldn't be long before Scott's secrets started to unravel, pulling those closest to him into a dark web of lies. 1 month after Laci's disappearance, a shocking revelation came to light. Scott Peterson was having an affair. Amber Frey, a 27-year-old single mother, came forward to the police, revealing that Scott had deceived her into believing he was a widower.
At this point in my life, I didn't need to randomly date different people, and I was looking for the one. And that's what Scott said. He was also looking for the one.
To Amber, Scott had portrayed himself as a grieving man who would be spending his first holiday season without his wife. The news spread quickly, and public sentiment turned against Scott. Amber, heartbroken by the discovery, bravely agreed to work with the police, recording conversations with Scott. In these recordings, Scott's demeanor was disturbingly calm, even indifferent to Laci's disappearance.
How was your New Year's?
Pretty awesome. Fireworks and everything for the Eiffel Tower. Everyone's in the stars now.
He was heard planning his future with Amber, even attending a New Year's Eve party and telling her he would soon be free. These tapes painted a dark picture of Scott's character, and they became some of the most pivotal evidence in the case. Amber's testimony and the recordings exposed Scott's chilling lack of emotion, casting serious doubt on his innocence. For many, this was a moment of no return. Months after Laci's disappearance, the search took a grim turn. On April 13, 2003, a passerby near the San Francisco Bay made a gruesome discovery that would change the course of the investigation. While walking along the shoreline, the passerby spotted what appeared to be human remains. These remains, later identified as an infant's partial body, were discovered tangled in the reeds near the shore. The following day, just a mile from where Connor's remains were found, another devastating discovery was made: the decomposed body of an adult female, eventually identified as Laci Peterson. Both bodies were found within miles of the Berkeley Marina, the very spot Scott had claimed to be fishing on Christmas Eve. The discovery shocked the community, turning the missing person case into a confirmed homicide investigation. For investigators, the proximity to Scott's alibi location was too strong to ignore, cementing him as the primary suspect. And for the public, it was a heartbreaking confirmation of the worst. With each passing day, more evidence mounted against Scott, leading to his eventual arrest. But what exactly led police to officially charge him with murder? Scott's fishing alibi and timeline didn't fully align, leading authorities to doubt his story. Investigators couldn't confirm his whereabouts during crucial hours, raising questions about his involvement. Scott's calm and seemingly detached demeanor at Laci's vigil was unsettling to those who loved her and to the investigators. This display of nonchalance drew public criticism and reinforced suspicions. The affair alone might not have been enough, but the deception Scott displayed during his calls with Amber, combined with his talk of freedom, painted him as a man with a chilling lack of regard for his wife. Investigators discovered that Scott was under financial strain, and they believed he may have seen Laci's death as a way to escape these burdens. When the bodies of Laci and her unborn son Connor washed ashore close to where Scott had claimed to be fishing, it was one of the strongest pieces of circumstantial evidence against him. These elements painted a picture of a man who had potentially planned his wife's death to rid himself of responsibility and live a new life, free of commitments. The murder trial of Scott Peterson became a national spectacle, with both the prosecution and defense presenting a high-stakes, emotionally charged case. Initially, both Scott's and Laci's families stood by him, united in their support. But as evidence mounted, a painful rift developed, separating Scott's family from Laci's. Scott's mother, Laci Peterson, attended court with an oxygen mask, unwavering in her belief in her son's innocence.
Because some truth will be out and hopefully closer to clearing Scott's name.
Meanwhile, Laci's mother, Sharon Rocha, and her family sat on the opposite side, visibly devastated by what they felt was Scott's betrayal. The prosecution argued that Scott had meticulously planned to kill his wife, presenting circumstantial evidence and using Amber Frey's recorded conversations with Scott to paint him as calculating and detached. Amber's testimony, combined with Scott's odd behavior and the location of Laci's remains, became cornerstones of the prosecution's argument. The defense, however, countered by pointing out the lack of direct evidence.
Garrigus said police collected more than 100 bags of items from Peterson's home and warehouse, analyzing them exhaustively for clues to a murder. He then held up a thick stack of crime lab results and said investigators found zip, nada, nothing.
They suggested other theories and even proposed that Laci may have been targeted by someone else while walking the dog. Despite the defense's attempts to cast doubt, the circumstantial evidence and Amber Frey's testimony were enough to sway the jury. When the verdict came, Scott Peterson was found guilty and sentenced to death. The courtroom was filled with tears as Sharon Rocha and her family wept, finding some measure of justice, while Scott's parents sat in shock. For them, the journey was far from over. They vowed to fight on, holding firm in their belief in Scott's innocence. Scott Peterson's conviction didn't put an end to the questions surrounding Laci's murder. In our next video, we'll cover the appeals, new revelations, and the ongoing campaign to challenge his conviction. Could there be more to the story? Join us as we dive deeper into this controversial case. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth true crime stories. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.